think he was at the dinner. That's when we met him.
For those who are on the Zoom call,
He was there too, Fred.
we are just waiting for our live stream to kick in and be appropriately buffered. So I'll just takes a minute. So please just be patient as we before we call the meeting to order. Is that the thumbs up that we're good to go? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to call the regular council meeting of January 26th at 7 p.m. to order. Time is 7:03. As we call the meeting to order, I just want to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territories of the Coast and the Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we'd like to recognize Lekwungen-speaking people, known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum nations, and that their connections to these lands continue to this day. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Breen, your microphone is on just in case you want.
Oh, sorry.
Adoption of minutes. We have two from the regular council meeting at 6 and 7 p.m. on January 12th. Moved, seconded. Any changes, corrections, amendments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We can receive all of the committee minutes together. Moved, seconded. We don't usually debate since they were already approved at the committee level. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Mayor's remarks, not an awful lot. I guess first, go Seahawks. It's very exciting if you're a local fan to see them going to the Super Bowl. I did have an opportunity to attend ABC Ferries forum. They were held, this is actually a new thing that they started to do, and I really wanted to just acknowledge it because I think it's really important that they had an open forum with their leadership team from the CEO and the senior leadership, meeting with coastal community mayors to get feedback on routes and challenges that people are having. And so I stayed silent. I listened to the folks from Powell River and other places that had more direct and immediate questions and comments. But I just wanted to acknowledge it's not always the case that operators consult with the people impacted, and so I thought that was a very positive process that they're undertaking. And next and last, but certainly not least, I just want to acknowledge the Oak Bay Heritage Foundation, who organized a series of heritage talks, and last week was Barry Guff, who did a fabulous talk about some of the early explorer ships, both and the impact of some of the treaties that were ended up being negotiated here on the Spanish, Portuguese, and British navies and their territorial disputes. So it was quite fascinating, and if you ever have a chance to see Mr. Guff speak, he's quite an expert at this field. That concludes my remarks. So on to the business at hand. We have next public comment and question period. This is for items that are not on the agenda but are of interest to the broader public. We welcome either people online. If you're attending through Zoom, you can raise your hand through the reactions tab. And if you're in the room, you can just raise your hand and then come forward. Thank you for being the initial person. What I'll ask is just demonstrate what we ask, which is just state your name and municipality of residence. And then you have up to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. So today I'd like to talk about the Garry Oak ecosystem. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Yeah, perfect. So we all know that we've lost 95% of this ecosystem.
Sorry, can you just give your name?
Oh, Scott Greiba. I live in Oak Bay.
Thank you.
Sorry. We all know we've lost 95% of this ecosystem. But to put that in context, it used to extend from 10 Mile Point down to Beacon Hill Park. We still have fragments of the ecosystem at Uplands Park, about 22 hectares, but we also have fragments within private neighborhoods up to 7 hectares. So we need to be conscious of these resources. I read through the community plan, the community forest plan, and it's a very good report. It suggests ecosystem level management for this resource, which I agree with 100%. The issue is there's a misalignment between the bylaws and that report. Right now, the bylaws encourage stem level management, so we remove a Gary oak, we replace it with a sapling. That sapling doesn't have the same ecological value as that mature Gary oak for about 200 years. The mature Gary oak produces food for mammals, habitat for birds, and insects, and so on. So it takes 200 years to get that same ecological value. So what I'm suggesting is we bring those two things in alignment, and we can do that by having a higher stumpage fee for mature Gary oaks, say $50,000 to $100,000, and that would reflect the value of this resource within that ecosystem as well as within the community, and it would also reflect the legacy. Remember, this ecosystem has been managed for 12,000 years. The First Nations managed it for camas production. They'd encourage low-intensity broadcast burns to create meadows for camas, which they harvested in the spring, and it was very important to them. So that's the legacy. We should respect that, and there's plenty of room to build without taking mature Gary oaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else wish to go, please come forward. At this point, I don't see any hands online, but if anybody online wishes to speak, oh, yep. No, I've got one person coming up first, and then we can go here. So same process, just name a municipality of residence, and you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name, Norman Whale, resident of the Uplands for the last 50 years, and I want to speak about the danger of defacement of the Uplands. Mayor and Council, it has been said that you hear with your ears and you listen with your brain. The Uplands is a residential park, and it is also a historic site. And it is in danger of defacement. The province of British Columbia has relegated to the municipality of Oak Bay the responsibility for the protection and the preservation of the uplands. Mayor and Council, I ask you humbly to do not yield to the demands of developers. Do not yield to the demands of developers. Rather, I ask you to continue your fine work, use your best efforts to serve the residents of Oak Bay, the people of Canada, and the visitors of the world. You alone have the responsibility to protect the uplands, only you. I ask you, please, for the benefit of the present generation and future generations, to act accordingly as protectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wales. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to speak tonight. And if I haven't already wished you all a happy new year. I'm a bit late, but at least I'm consistent. Okay, I'm here for three things.
Can you just give your name for the
Oh, I'm sorry, I
municipality for the-
forget. I thought everybody knew me. My name's Leona Furnett, and I am a 45-year resident of Oak Bay.
Welcome.
I am here because I have some significant, and I say significant, concerns about how we are vetting the claims of proponents, developers. I have witnessed in meetings publicly, here in chambers with design panel and advisory panel, the blatant lying of developers and their representatives, and I hate to say this, at times, the stretching of reality by staff. I believe we need...
Point of order, Your Worship.
So, Ms. Furnett, I think you just stood in this chamber and accused our staff of essentially lying in this chamber, and our staff are obligated to maintain a very high level of professional standards, and certainly we have a process here of going back and forth with developers to ask questions and so forth. And so
I agree.
perhaps we just use the tone. If there's things that you think that there's processes that we can improve, let's maybe perhaps focus
Well,
there.
that's what I'm on to next. Thank you. We have a requirement for developers to consult with the neighborhood. And I am aware of and involved in 2 developments where both proponents came forward and did not tell the truth. And I believe abrogated their responsibility as good citizens to be truthful and honest with us. And I think the municipality needs to look at some methodology of ensuring when proponents come forward with information, that information has been vetted. I see this as a big mistake, and as we continue to see development happening in Oak Bay, it's only going to get worse, because let's face it, this is a gold rush. My second, yeah?
I'm not going to, I'll pause for just a second. By all means, if you have specific observations of that being true,
Yes.
please share them with myself and staff. I think it is important that we have accurate information as we're making decisions.
Yes.
I don't want to go into the details in this chamber, but I think
No, and
if you
nor
don't
do
mind-
I,
okay,
nor do
please
I.
continue.
No, the other thing is I'm concerned about, the gentleman earlier tonight talked about the biosphere. And, you know, we're taking down beautiful 100-year-old oaks to accommodate some sort of densification target, which I think is dangerous and is not core to our values as Oak Bay citizens. I would like to see stronger policies in place to protect those trees regardless of where they stand on a person's lot. And I would hope that we become more diligent. You know, it's one thing to replace a 200 to 500-year-old tree with a less than 10-year sapling. Of course, that's what developers are going to do because it's cheap. We need to really stand behind the Gary Oaks. They are our protectors here.
Ms. Furnett, that's time for you.
Yes. And I will say thank you, and just remember my slogan, for and no more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak to council? Again, on matters not before us tonight, and then I have a person online as well. But please go ahead. Same process, just name, municipality of residence, and you're welcome to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name's Evan Brown, and a resident of Oak Bay. And I thought today there's some interesting comments that were just made, and it's one of these places where I think we're at a very crucial point in the municipality's history of where we can really, and you guys can really help us shape the way it's going to look going forward. And I'm worried and very concerned that we're risking to make quick decisions on provincial mandates that are going to affect the community for hundreds of years to come. And you know, I've lived all over the world. I've lived in big centers like Toronto and New York, and I grew up here in Oak Bay. But I always wanted to come back to Oak Bay when I was successful enough to do so. And it's not a municipality where you can normally just afford to start in, but a lot of people endeavor to finish here and live here. And so I've always admired this particular municipality in all of Canada. And I think it's probably the best municipality in the entire country. And I don't say that just because I live here. I think it actually is. So you guys have, and we all have, you know, a big weight on our shoulders to keep the natural beauty of it intact. And I'm just worried that the development of it is coming fast and furious. And like that was just said, there's a bit of a gold rush here. And every day I'm hearing more and more about a new house selling and a new development happening. And what I'm hearing now is it's not just single family residents. Everybody's trying to put up four homes or two duplexes at the expense of the natural beauty of what this municipality has to offer. So I think we just want to be careful and we want to go slow. And so whatever we can do to hit the pause on a lot of this and not give in to the pressure of the government or the pressure of a developer is important to me, and I think important to a lot of other people in the municipality. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I have online Ms. Matthews. You can unmute yourself and just formally introduce yourself. We'll start the timer.
Yes, Kathleen Matthews. I live in Oak Bay for, I guess it's now almost 33 years. I just want to express my sincere gratitude for the speakers that have come forward tonight, both online and in person. And I think they are speaking for a great number of people that are really concerned about the preservation of our ecosystem. There's a legacy, we're committed to reconciliation. We need to respect the origin and the natural environment and those Gary Oak trees. And I think we have to find a way that if people are going to build fourplexes, they have to do it, but not take out the trees, not take out the dairy oaks, not take out the cedar trees. And I just want to express my sincere appreciation for everybody who has spoken tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. I don't have other hands. Please come forward in the room. Probably figured out the system by now. Just name a municipality and off you go.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Robert Duff. I am a new resident of the Fairfield neighborhood of City of Victoria, and I'm here to raise some safety concerns regarding the cycling infrastructure at Henderson Road approaching Cedar Hill Crossing, entering UVic. As part of my grad program at UVic, I'm helping the university come up with proposals to develop their sustainable transportation plan. And whenever I talk to people about cycling, they don't actually have an issue with cycling on UVic or mainly in the municipalities, but specifically at this intersection. I have some diagrams that I prepared that I can share around afterwards, but as it stands right now, the entrance to Cedar Hill Cross from Henderson Road enters on a curve, and the cycling lane disappears and reappears at the end of the intersection outside of the roadway. And so with UVic's bike lane, it starts on the left-hand side of the road. And so if you were to follow the established cycling lane, you'd have to go to the far right, cross through 2 lanes of traffic through the intersection onto the bike lane. And I believe, I don't know if it's official or unofficial, but there is spray painted lines leading from the bike lane into a median between a left turn lane and straight lane, which because of that curve, it is an immense blind spot for vehicles approaching cyclists. And every time I'm on a bus or I'm on my bike, there's always a car that has to slam on its brakes, a bike that has to just stop and wait for a clear entrance, and it's a very high risk of vehicle and cyclist collisions. As part of this diagram that I've prepared, I have some suggestions for improvements. We already have established methods for cycling infrastructures on large intersections, and I would like to see something brought forth on that fact, just to make cycling more appealing, more safe, and just reduce these risks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can just leave the diagrams over on this table, and it'll be circulated around to us and to engineering. And we're just in the meeting previously, we're just talking about cycling infrastructure work, so it's a good timing on your part.
Happily, yeah, I've got a bunch of copies, so I'll
Just
just
leave them here. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address council at this time as part of our public comment and question period? Can I just ask staff, can we just lower the hand that's online that's already spoken? I think there's just a legacy hand there. Anybody wish to speak to council?
It's not a legacy hand, I put it up again.
Oh, okay. Well, you have about 30 seconds left in your time, so go ahead, Ms. Matthews.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to support the person who just spoke about those intersections. I've biked to UVic for 33 years. Turning left onto Cedar Hill Crossroads at the intersection as you come off campus is impossible, and it is really dangerous. I'd also like to just confirm that as time went on, although I appreciated the number of people biking, I found it actually really scary to bike on campus, and I found it scary to even walk on campus. So I really hope that campus will do something to reduce the speed of bikers. You've got these young people that are full of energy, and they just don't pay attention, and I think they need to let me know that they're coming behind me. I'm older and I could trip. So I just would like to add that, but I think I appreciate, again, in addition to appreciating a speaker that's just spoken about a really important topic.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. And by all means, you should,
Lower my hand.
that should be raised with the university on their own lands. We don't have any control over that portion of it. Any other members of the public wish to speak to council? Don't see any other hands popping up, so thank you very much to all of those who have addressed council this evening. We really do benefit from the public input that we get here. Moving on then to Committee of the Whole recommendations from the meeting of January 19th. We do have public input on this, although we've already had two significant amounts of time spent on this at the Committee of the Whole. So Committee of the Whole recommends to ourselves these recommendations. So I'm just going to call once if anybody wishes to speak to item 7.1 or 7.2 before council essentially approves the, I'm just going to get public input first, Councillor Green. So does anybody from the public wish to talk to us on 7.1 or 7.2? We don't usually get... Oh, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Before we get there, because we're going to do 7.1 first, seeing no hands, I'm going to go to this table then. Can I just have the...
Move your seat.
Well, I think we just need to move the recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. I think that's the process.
Okay, I'll move the recommendations from Committee of the Whole.
For 7.1, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Councillor Green, you wish to recuse yourself?
Yes, thank you. I have to recuse on item 7.2. I recused when this last came to council, and I'm recusing again as I have a close family member whose property is involved in this report. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just step into the committee room, this should only take us a couple of seconds, and then we'll invite you back in. We need like the dating game where they put the isolation headphones on. Okay, so we move then to item 7.2.
I'll move this, the recommendation.
Move the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. Is there a second? Move second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? Can we just get reach out to Councillor Green? We now move to section 8.1. This is the reconsideration of motion 2025-675 from the regular council meeting held November 24th. Welcome back, Councillor Green. We're just on item 8.1 for reconsideration. I think there was some confusion over process, so I'll try and just provide a couple of bit of clarity. So tonight we're considering the original application, so it's back at this table. So reconsideration, we consider the motion that was live right before the question was called. So for just a reminder, that motion was that the application be denied. So we're going to talk to that applicant, to that motion. We also, of course, have a point of information, have added correspondence from the public and from the applicant. The applicant correspondence asked the opportunity to revise their approach to these properties. I just want to take a moment to explain the options in front of council, because I think there's a bit of conflation between the reconsideration and the new correspondence, and it's caused some confusion in the public realm. So first, we're not going to be considering approval of the revised plan that's been in that correspondence. That's not what we're doing tonight. So if the motion on the floor is defeated, which would reopen a different direction, then the appropriate process, if council wants to consider that, would be to refer the application back to staff. And that would then trigger a process for it to come back to this table. So we're not going to be debating that tonight. And just a little bit of clarity on the why of reconsideration. And just that we don't have to give a reason, but I think it's fair to ask. It was just clear after the last meeting that questions remained around the relative weight of zoning, design guidelines, housing targets, and other factors that put things here. This is the first application of this type under Bill 44, and now with an updated OCP. I think those are questions that we're still figuring out, those balances. I do think reconsideration should be used very sparingly. I also know that residents want council to make good decision making, so I think it's important that we have all the information needed to make good decisions and to be clear in our rationale for those decisions, and so I think this process will help with that. I don't anticipate this will be a long item on the agenda, so let's commence debate. We're back where it was. So the motion live on the floor, as a reminder, is to decline the application. So I'm just going to ask people again, as we do in these situations, to speak either in favor or against the motion. You can reference, obviously, any of the correspondence received, but we're not debating anything to do with any of the correspondence received. We're really here talking to the specific application that came to us back in November. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. I originally put the motion to deny on the table, so I'm going to speak to that again. I have reviewed the application again. I'm not persuaded that the proposal as originally submitted adequately meets the intent of the Uplands Design Guidelines or the official community plan policies that apply to this area. In particular, I find that the overall massing and building envelope, when viewed in relation to adjacent properties, do not sufficiently respect the established spatial pattern or scale along that portion of Lansdowne Road. I'm also concerned that the siting and architectural expression, taken as a whole, do not maintain the residential park-like setting that the guidelines and the OCP seek to preserve in the uplands. While I acknowledge that the work of staff and the advisory design panel, council is required to exercise its own judgment under the governing statutory framework. In this case, I've reached a different conclusion regarding the suitability of the proposed design. For those reasons, grounded in siting and architectural design considerations, I remain unable to support their application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Others wishing to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, and then Smart, and then Appleton, and then Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At the time the matter was under discussion, I did vote vote in support of the motion put forward, which was to deny the application. My opinion on that remains the same. The Oak Bay's official community plan identifies the Uplands as a distinct and significant neighborhood protected by provincial legislation and municipal bylaws, including the Oak Bay Special Powers Act. The framework is intended to preserve the area's park-like character, uphold its design standards, and maintain its environmental integrity. The mature tree canopy, including Gary oaks and other large species, is a defining feature supported by established heritage guidelines. The intent of the proposal that we reviewed was to depart from those existing guidelines, and it's clearly stated that in its report that was the intent. A collection of two sets of three similar-sized units adjacent to each other is proposed, a departure from historic development guidelines for prominent, distinctly designed buildings. The smaller, lower maintenance yards proposed deviate from the characteristic park-like setting created by substantial properties with buffer zones between homes and streets and extensive landscaped areas. Uplands design guidelines recommend discrete parking solutions, narrow landscape driveways, and a well-landscaped main entrance that provides a clear transition from street to home. In contrast, the proposed private estate would feature a 6-meter wide laneway, visually narrowed with permeable grass pavers, yes, but still 6 meters wide, featuring 26 parking spaces, both covered and uncovered. This results in a significant amount of land dedicated to vehicles, and despite the references to strong active transportation amenities in the area. So for those reasons, I continue to not support the application that was put forward on that date. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Smart, Appleton, Watson, Green.
Thank you. I will be again speaking against the declining of the application. This wasn't an easy project to consider, especially I spent quite a lot of time looking at the tree loss and the application and putting that in the perspective of the Uplands design guidelines. It's not insignificant to me that as I look at it, there's 15 mature Gary oak trees that will be lost. That's not insignificant to me. I do believe every tree is an ecosystem of nature that goes beyond a single tree. I do have to balance that with the overall amenity of the project, and I do feel like this project does have a lot of amenity for the community in the quality of the architectural design, in the fact that its long-term landscape plan envisions a more intact ecosystem than we have now, because this is not currently an intact Gary oak ecosystem. There are a lot of plantings within this property that are invasive and do not belong. And when I look at the design guidelines with regards to the residential park-like atmosphere, I really focused in my decision-making on the role that massing plays in defining that residential park-like atmosphere, and particularly looking at if we were as a council to envision asking the applicant to have come back with 2 triplexes, and what might the footprint of that look like, and might it have less impact to the trees. When I looked through what we could do to frame this application in a different light, I didn't feel convinced that there would be significantly less tree loss. And so that was some of the exercise that I went through in analyzing the trees that were lost, the amount of them, versus the fact that this will be a community within a community with a lot of connection, with a lot of beauty, and in the long term, a really solid plan to actually increase a healthy, diverse ecosystem. So I think that's shared a lot of what I went through, and I guess I just particularly wanted to say for me when I interpreted the Uplands design guidelines, the guidelines particularly that refer to the maintenance of the Gary Oaks are really around the landscape plan and not around the massing of the building. And so for me, that was also part of my decision making in coming to this challenging decision of weighing whether creating more houses in the community that have, I think, a really beautiful sense of community connection in one shared driveway, as opposed to keeping to 2 individual lots, whether we could value that over losing some trees, but in the long run having a really considered landscape plan.
Thank you. I have next Councillor Appleton, Watson, Green.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. And I appreciate the opportunity for this to come back before council, because it allows a little bit of, allows an opportunity to kind of review the rationale and the decision-making basis for why this was originally considered and how the standards apply. In revisiting this and reviewing it, you know, I will sort of reiterate and sort of come back to the fact that this is, the issue here is with the application of the Uplands design guidelines. It is distinct from what small-scale multi-unit housing and the zoning allows you to do. I think that we understand really clearly that there is a different set of standards that does rest clearly within the purview of council to apply. So irrespective of what the zoning provides for, council has got to assess based on the upland siting and design guidelines as we have for many decades. One of the things that I also reflected on in terms of revisiting this was sort of the origin of how small-scale multi-unit was debated with respect to Uplands properties, R1 and R2 zoning, when that was implemented. There was the opportunity and the option by the provincial legislation for larger properties such as R1s and R2s because of the large size, because of the large square footage, to actually be somewhat exempt from small-scale multi-unit or to take a different course on those lots, with the idea that those lots were potentially good candidates for, in a place other than Uplands, potentially good candidates for subdivision or a larger scale form of housing. And I think council decided at that time, it was ultimately council's decision to have that zoning apply in Uplands with the idea that there were specific standards to be applied. So I remain of the same, I will essentially reiterate the specific elements of the Upland siting and design guidelines that in my reading of the guidelines and in my application of the guidelines fall short of the objectives that were prescribed. First of all is the relationship with adjacent buildings, which specifically calls for massing comparable in scale and massing to other buildings on the street. The response to that in the application is in fact that they're designed to appear smaller, recognizing that there is a significant difference in massing. Second element of the Upland siting and design guidelines is the one for general massing proportion and overall articulation of building in relation to established housing. It reiterates that massing should be comparable to others on the street. And I do not, in my opinion, interpret collective massing of multiple buildings to be equivalent to the massing of a single larger structure. That I do not think is how the guideline would be expected to be applied. So again, the response to the guideline here specifically identifies that the massing and proportion with respect to other homes on Lansdowne is different, whereas the guideline is asking for comparable massing and scale. And then thirdly, the third component of the Upland siting and design is the relationship in character and massing to the image of the area. So again references siting and massing as key components of achieving the guidelines. So siting and scale are referenced numerous times in the guidelines, and collectively they prescribe the standard that we're trying to meet in the Uplands. So the guidelines themselves are of long standing. They have applied for a long period of time and are very clear and identified for the purposes of folks wanting to bring forward a development application. I think in my time on council, reviewed a number of Upland siting and design guidelines and can remember elements of Upland siting and design that have not been supported by council because in various different ways they don't keep with scale or impact that we would expect the guidelines to produce. So I am following specifically here, Your Worship, the guidelines that are laid out for all prospective applicants in the Uplands, and find that with these specific components taken in their entirety, they do not meet the standard expected of the Uplands siting and design guidelines. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Going to Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I too prepared for this by looking back over the application that we last considered and was denied, and noting that the application that came for this decision that was denial had been modified to address some concerns that council had raised previously around tree loss. And so the proposal that achieved the denial vote there was one of the buildings had been moved to create more room for the existing Gary Oak little glade at the back of, well, not the little, but the Gary Oak glade at the back of the whatever, the property to the right, if you're facing the street, that's 3850, right? Thank you. But I also was present when this application was reviewed at the advisory design panel and listened to that commentary. And I guess going back through the guidelines, I went one by one through them, and I had some thoughts. I did want to say in my review that guidelines, even when they're being considered by the advisory design panel, are exactly that. They're guidelines. They're not hard and fast rules. And so they are always open to subjective assessment, in effect, that is going on around any table or any panel or by staff or even the design crew themselves when they are responding to these guidelines. But I did go back with them, keeping that sort of, this is a subjective exercise in mind. And I felt that this design proposal addressed all of them very adequately, with my only two areas of concern being maintenance of residential park-like setting, which I have raised at past discussions of the project, and preservation of significant and healthy trees and plant materials. But the other ones, I think, I'm going to just bracket those two for a second in my comments. I think that for every other element, this is an absolutely excellent proposal of very high design quality. With respect to general massing and proportion, I look at that guideline and I can see why it does need to be looked at with an open mind, but it's still subjective, because having seen all the other things that have come into the advisory design panel and the Uplands over my term on council so far, we get a very, very wide range of things that come in, and it would not be true to say that on streetscapes, new projects necessarily meet the massing of the things that are around them. They don't. There is a very, very wide diversity across the Uplands with respect to massing and proportion. And we would not expect somebody who wants to build a modest home to have to build a 7,000 square foot mansion in the Uplands or an 8,000 square foot mansion just because the lot was large enough. That would be counter to many other policies and outlooks in our official community plan about what is good planning and building in today's, in the modern era, when we're concerned about climate change and use of materials and everything. So that left with I say that because Councillor Appleton feels quite strongly about that, but I disagree with him quite fundamentally. I think that this proposal is totally appropriate with respect to massing and articulation, and presents a very, very good landscape plan with the exception of the tree loss. So while I will continue to vote not for denial, if we had had a chance, I would have asked for some further consideration of that, because I think there is possibly still some room to look more at that Gary oak canopy. I think other of the trees, although they're protected because of size. They're not necessarily valuable in the same way that we look at our Gary oaks. And I just wanted to say it was, in the final proposal, it was 13 Gary oaks out of 36 that were under question. And I don't think it's an unreasonable place to be having a further discussion about those Gary oaks, because I think it is a very important part. It is an important urban forest, but otherwise this proposal, I think, is outstanding in every way and should be allowed to go forward for some further modification. So I will be voting the same way I did the last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Green, I have you next.
Thank you. I too supported the denial of this application when it first came before us. And that position, after much research and actually spending time at the property. So I walked both lots in the pouring rain and in the sunshine to get a good feel for that area, and particularly for the mature tree Gary oak meadow that is there. So I will continue to vote against the original application, and this is why. I did go through the Uplands design guidelines. I also went through the architectural guidelines for the advisory design panel, which was helpful. But basically, there are two things that are compelling: focusing on the preserving a residential park atmosphere, and to ensure the sensitivity of new development to existing dwellings and landscape features. And that last sentence appears both in an older version of the guidelines and also an updated version to reflect Bill 44. Under the focus on preserving a residential park atmosphere, these three elements are fundamental: mature tree protection, specific setbacks, building forms that harmonize with the neighborhood's historic, low density, and natural character. Now, Councillor Appleton referred to that as well specifically, the harmonization of anything with the rest of the neighborhood. The design and character elements, the landscape and the environment, siting and setbacks, and I think this speaks to scale and massing. And finally, the heritage status that continues to influence the scrutiny of these development applications in the uplands, and I agree with that. So I will continue to support the motion to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green, and to all who have spoken. So the motion on the floor is a motion to deny. So I will speak against the motion. It's just the way I spoke last time. I think, to my mind, I don't think the application that's in front of us is adequate. But I also think that this being, particularly being a new effort to consider how to manage some of these asks within the uplands and the constraints that we have, that conversation is benefits from a bit of back and forth. So, and I think that feeling I had last time, I struggled with how we could give direction back to the applicant in terms of what might be sufficient, but given the difficulty around the tree protection. And while we're not here to debate that because it's not fleshed out, I think particularly the fact that the applicant has come back and offered significant new green space attached to it and a few other options, to my mind, reinforces that we actually have something a bit more tangible to look at. And so I do think that this application doesn't deserve to be just declined. I think it deserves to have a chance to go back to staff for that conversation to happen and for those pieces to be brought forward. I think there's a couple of things there. That there was a number of concerns about the subdivision aspect of this that were addressed in the letter. There was aspects of the putting covenants to protect the green space in perpetuity, which is different than most private property is given. And I do just want to reflect that the overall design, while needing, I think some tweaking, I actually think I want to highlight a couple of things within the design piece that I think should be applauded, because I think if we're giving feedback to people as to what's coming forward, this is fairly unique because there's two properties side by side and they're sharing a driveway. So one is just the narrowness of that driveway. There is parking there with permeable pavers. The amount of permeable surface within this design, because of the nature of the approach, is actually very high, and I think that should be applauded. I really appreciated the way that the copse of trees at the front was being maintained, and the driveway was allowed to wind into the development in a way that Olmsted followed when he was doing the original layouts, which was following the curvature of the land and maintaining the trees as much as possible. And I think the quality of the design of the buildings is very high. And I also appreciated that the building, the back left, the northwest corner, was also designed in a way that is a single-story stature, which again reduces the massing effect from the street of that repetitive piece of it. So I think to my mind, there is sufficient benefit here of it going back to staff. I think that that conversation should continue, because I think that we want to get the best possible designs out of the siting and design guidelines. And I think the only way that happens is an iterative approach, which is what we're seeing right now, which is the first of probably several applications over time that are going to be testing this. And I guess I'd raise a little flag of if this is not the number of buildings we want in the uplands and things, then I think we should be doing that in zoning. That should be our primary tool, not setting in design, because I think this is a difficult piece to get to the end point of the process and then have it come back to it's hard to know what's going to be to see success. So that's my thinking of this. I do think that it has I think the idea and some of the benefits are sufficient, particularly with some of the indications from the applicant. They're continuing to consider additional adoptions, that we should not decline it at this time, but send it back to staff for that work to happen. Otherwise, I think we're stuck in a place where we can't even have the conversation on a tangible project, which I think is the benefit again of the whole community. So that's where I'm at the moment on this ask. Everybody's had a chance to speak. The motion on the floor is to decline the application. If that motion passes, then the motion is declined. If it fails, then we can seek further direction to send this back to staff. I don't think anybody's ready to approve it, so in fact we don't. So I think we're probably sending it back to staff for further work if it fails. So the motion on the floor is to decline. I'm going to call the question, unless there's any other comments. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of declining the application? And those opposed? I have myself, Councillor Smart, Councillor Watson opposed. That motion carries. The application is declined. That ends the item. Thank you, everyone. We don't take questions from the floor. Sorry. We are now moving on to item 8.2. If people were here for that item, you're more than welcome to quietly depart the room. We are moving on. I just ask that you keep the conversation to a minimum until you're well outside, just because it tends to overwhelm our chambers in here. I'm going to move to an item number 8.2, which is the McNeill traffic calming and utility replacement. This is a change order approval request. Mr. Samukovic, welcome. We don't get to have you in our chambers too often, so it's nice to see you here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just going to wait for the room to clear here. All right, thank you. Yes, so staff requests council to approve the change order for $339,605 excluding GST to C1 contractors, and increase the construction contract limit by the same amount for the McNeill Avenue traffic calming and utility replacement project. Yes, this change requires an increase beyond the operational limits specified by the sustainable purchasing policy, being about $250,000.
Thank you very much. We have a detailed report. Is there any questions before we get to a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, then Braithwaite.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Mr. Samukovic. Thank you very much for the report. Not totally surprising, as we are relatively new into infrastructure replacement, and I think there will be a few surprises along the way, if I can term them surprises. But I'm just wondering, with the increase here, so how does this relate to the overall budget that was for the project, including contingency?
Go ahead, Mr. Samukovic.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I have the budget on the table in the staff report. So it's looking at it right now, it's slightly less than 10% so far increase over the approved budget for the contractor. Typically, under the MMCD contract type, changes of up to 15% are typical. Having said that, we are about 34% complete on this project, which gives us a bit of a sense of how we're trending. I would say we could probably expect a few more changes for this project, given what we know already, but haven't documented for you today. At a high level, we have a significant amount of aged infrastructure along that route. And since this winter, observations from the flooding, we've seen some additional drain work that'll probably need to be looked at as a change order. Yeah, difficult to see through the preliminary test pitting that we do, just to the extent of what we will need to excavate until we sometimes get into these situations. So when we have a corridor that has a lot of pipes in the ground, it's really when you dig it that you see their condition. So this is one of those cases. And specifically for this area, there's two sanitary sewers. So it gives us an opportunity to reduce it to one, which actually improves our long-term operating costs of managing one over two as well. So yeah, just a couple more details there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for that information. So just for certainty of this, then this is what we know today, but with the project, there could be more forthcoming then. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Braithwaite, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, mine was around the contingency fund as well, because it looks like we've had to dip into that contingency fund more than once. It just, this time it happens to be more than $250,000, so that's why staff has to come to us, but it looks like it's actually gone from the engineering services have increased from 191 to 480, which is like $300,000 or more than double what was originally expected. So I'm just wanting to make sure that there's enough in the contingency fund to cover it, but if not, where would that money come from? But it sounds like we still have enough money in that contingency fund, so.
Yes, and the capital utility program budgets that we have assigned through the 5-year capital plan, a lot of them are scheduled through capital renewals, but we do end up having to prioritize when you have a capital project like this, pulling from those general ledgers. So we won't go over and into reserves, obviously, without asking, but sometimes we'll need to pull in from those general ledgers to support the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, and if I may, Mayor, through you. The report also mentions an extended timeline for the project of 35 days. So how does that affect the other projects in the municipality, or does it? And how many days could this project be extended before it would have like major implications on other projects that the engineering department is responsible for?
Mr. Smukovic.
It's a good question, not the easiest one to answer, but so specifically to other projects, we have a committed team for this one, allocated staff resources to look after it. So it would have some impact on other priorities, but I would not say it would be a huge amount. And we do consider also contingency on schedule when we enter these projects. I'd say for this project, my primary concern would be the grant funding and making sure we complete it within the timeline of this summer and stay on the good graces of the awarding authorities for that grant, which we are doing proactively through change management.
Thank you, and I have one more question, Mayor, if I may, through you. I understand that the historical record discrepancies and the aging infrastructure can really significantly impact any of our municipal projects. And I know it's impossible to know this, but do we have any indications of other issues like this? Or are we doing things like, I think it's called potholing or test pitting to confirm the actual location of the pipes, and what does that show?
So through the mayor, yes, we are doing those and also less invasive type of investigations like CCTV. Getting ahead this year, we do have a program, and it'll continue for the storm water infrastructure. The last couple of years, we were focused on sanitary sewers. So we have a program in-house. We have some tools to do some of that, but we've actually expanded that program this year to include vendor support services to do the CCTVing ahead of time. So we are investigating, but there's also a bit of a limitation there as to how much you can do, just to balance impacts to the residents. Digging for 6 months ahead of a job starting, it comes at a cost. So we do have a bit of a statistical approach of usually 10-15% of, and then making a decision on that. And yeah, based on our infrastructure, that can sometimes be not enough.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to Mr. Mahalik, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Smukovic.
Smukovic.
It's okay.
That's just your first name, I was saying. Okay.
It's okay.
Very bad. It's a technical question about abandonment of the existing cast iron water main. And I just want to understand, is that done for expediency, to reduce costs, to provide structural support underground? If you could just speak a little, and does the abandoned pipe get mapped so that it forms part of our record of actually what's going on?
Give it to staff. That's the easiest way of saying it.
Yeah. So thank you. No, I'll answer that question. So thank you through the mayor. I think the larger portion of the replacement or the abandonment would be the sanitary sewers in this case. There is a section that we're crossing through the intersection that's going to require the upgrade of the water main. But if the pipes are usually over 350 millimeters, we start considering CDF control density fill or lightweight density concrete that we could fill the pipes in. It depends on the length of the pipe and how easy we can get in there, but we do try and cap the pipes or fill them in so they don't become a hazard for the future through a sinkhole or other.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I may,
Go ahead, Mr.
just
Reddick.
to address the second part of the question, yes, abandoned pipes are mapped.
Thank you. I see no other hands, so perhaps I can get a motion on the floor for
Move the staff recommendation.
moved and seconded. This is for approval of the change order. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Just very quickly through you to both of you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the report, but also for highlighting the problems on McNeill. I live nearby, and I know there have been many issues and concerns over the years about flooding and so on, and this is long overdue and very welcome by the residents in the area, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much to staff. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 8.3, Uplands Siting and Design for 3280 Uplands Road. Mr. Green, go ahead. And this is a very simple one, so please a brief introduction.
Sure. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. The district has received the Uplands Site and Design application for the property located at 3280 Uplands Road. The purpose of the application is to allow for the renovation of the existing single-family dwelling to enable the creation of a new secondary suite. The application was presented to the advisory design panel on January the 13th of this year, and the panel recommended that the application be approved. Staff are also recommending that the application also be approved. I don't see the applicant here, but the applicant was invited to this meeting, but I don't see them online or in the room today.
Hello, Mayor and Council.
I was going to move the staff recommendation if that was agreeable.
So the motion is made to approve the setting and design. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you for being here, Mr. Horvath, and we'll good luck with the project.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. We move. Oh, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to make a comment. The application's clearly been approved. Just to council, that this is an example of an application that really desperately needs to be the sort of thing that's given to staff to look at. It's a lot of time and effort for the applicant, the advisory design panel, producing drawings and everything for changes which are completely invisible. All the work is being done basically inside an existing building, and it's just an example of how, with some changes to our regulatory framework in terms of permit approvals, we would create less work for applicants, staff, council, and the public.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. We certainly get a few of those that are very simple. With that, we move then to item 8.4, which is the Community Amenity Contributions Policy Review. Mr. Bull, or Mr. Green, you're going to introduce this, and thank you for the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is recommending that Council rescind its 2019 Community Amenity Contribution Policy that has been used to secure the payment of charges from new development at the time of rezoning applications. Now that the district has adopted a new amenity cost charge in early 2025 that is authorised by the Local Government Act, and given that there is overlap between the existing CSE policy and the new ACC bylaw, staff believe that there is a legal risk with the current CSE policy, and as such staff are recommending that the CSE policy be rescinded and that the district rely on the new development financing tools that have been expressly contemplated by the Local Government Act. Staff are also recommending that those applicants for rezoning that have already committed to or have already paid a CSE contribution be refunded where they will be subject to the ACC charges. Happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Green, and thank you for the report. Are there any questions of staff on this item?
Move staff recommendation.
Sure, we can make a motion. Is there a seconder? Thank you. But Councillor Braithwaite, you indicated you wish to.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor, just through you and through to staff, just to clarify that the ACC funds can't be redirected outside of this bylaws project list. That's correct. And so we couldn't actually tailor any of those contributions for any neighborhood impacts. I just want to clarify that, right?
Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Through your worship, to Councillor Braithwaite, so that is correct, that the ACC bylaw is a specific project list attached to that bylaw, and so if council wanted to make changes to other projects, then it would need to revise that bylaw accordingly.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you. I actually had a comment and a question about that. That list in the ACC bylaw, is it determined in the same way, with the same kind of scrutiny and mathematics as the calculations made for setting DCC charges, which have to do with specific projects?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So then just a follow-up question. So if we were to revise the list, there would be background work required? I guess I ask the question because I see that the current list is very facility focused, and streetscape and public space things are completely absent. It's all very related to facilities and to some extent parks. So we have no really ecological restoration, bioswales, greening of parking lots, street furniture, none of that's in there. So what kind of work would be required if we were going to go in that direction and expand it? What would be the next steps to changing the schedule?
Over to you, Mr. Green, or Ms.
Thank you, Mayor. It would be, through you, it would be, an update to the ACC bylaw, so the same mechanism that you were referencing, identifying certain costs, identifying the anticipated growth and doing the calculation, and include other matters to it would be needed. This bylaw is fairly new from early last year, and that's and it is a new bylaw, so we're one of the first in the province to have this bylaw. So it could be revised at any point in time, but in staff's view, we are anticipating that in a couple of years, we would look at both programs regardless to make sure that they remain current to the community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak? No, we're good. Anything else, Councillor Watson? Okay, thank you. I'm going to just do a quick follow-up to that question because we've triggered, and that is through me to you and staff. There are mechanisms, obviously, in development permit areas for conversations with applicants. So we have setting and design guidelines and some other aspects. So some of the things I think mentioned, like some of the green space, bioswales, those sorts of things could be part of that discussion. They just wouldn't be mandated or covered if they were on public space by those costs. Is that fair to say, Mr. Green or Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Either features could be reflected in design guidelines as well, and then they would be included in the project. And I think in the case of rezoning applications, there's still some leeway to consider the overall impact of the project. And however, a formal CAC policy is something that has been superseded by the new amenity cost charges bylaw tool. Thank you.
I'll move both.
Thank you. My apologies, Ms. Anderson. I didn't have my microphone on. We move on then to item 8.5. I have in my schedule, we're a little behind where I thought we were going to get through this in a timely fashion, so we'll try and keep this to but there's a lot to get through here. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Bowl. There's a brief presentation, and then we can get to some options in front of council. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come on. It basically summarizes the kind of decisions that are available to you, and I can go through them so we have kind of a picture of everything, and then we can circle back to any of the slides if that's handy for the discussion.
And for anybody who's at home watching or in the chambers, the presentation has been attached to the agenda package, so you can see there in maybe a bit more clearly than on a screen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So the topic is to look at council priority projects for this year, specifically those projects led by the Community Building and Planning Services Department. And it offers an opportunity, a follow-up opportunity on prioritization, and it follows up on a discussion that council had late November when most other projects were prioritized and selected for this year. I'll skip the outline, that will become clear as we go through it. Just to recap what was approved in November of last year, these were the projects that were in stream or directed by council to advance. It includes 2 community climate action planning projects. It included some follow-up to the official community plan that actually was directed in December. It also includes pre-zoning for the updated OCP, optimization of development processes, as well as planning to support pre-zoning for City Hall Corner. There's also a number of projects that council asked to get more information on as part of this report today in front of you. Those are referenced in the report as potential other projects for 2026. And those include a project to initiate village area planning, a standard of maintenance bylaw for heritage designated properties, a building deconstruction and relocation bylaw, a tenant protection bylaw, affordable housing strategy project, and recently added for consideration changes to the Infill housing program. So in the report, looking at what kind of decisions could be taken on these, there's an option to advance as was previously planned, and that would see the projects from the first slide advance, and some of them would come back to you for confirmation of some changes that have arisen over the past year. A second option, kind of a specific arrangement for the climate action program, is to consider adding the deconstruction bylaw, and we are offering, or we are suggesting that could be done if the community climate action plan, which is one of the out of the 2 climate action projects, is the least far advanced. It could be passed or delayed to 2027, and it would free up time there to deal with the deconstruction bylaw, which is a project based on a CRD bylaw that is under preparation. A third option would be to reduce the scope of existing planned projects and then add 1 project. And it's also a bit of a combination of different things where of the 3 projects that are listed, the pre-zoning project to implement the OCP, the optimization of development processes, and for advancing planning for City Hall Corner. In the next slide and in the report, there is some scoping changes proposed. They are meant to limit the time needed for those projects, and that would free up some time for another project that could be added to the list for 2026. And this slide, which I cannot read from here, this is probably too much small print, but it comes down in essence for those projects we forego for 2026 parts of the project that require engagement for those 3 projects or require substantial technical work in order to make that possible, and this outline is in attachment 2 of your report. There's also a 4th option, and that simply is to switch over projects, and then more of the potential projects could be advanced, but only if other planned projects would be removed from the list, so that the number of projects doesn't change, but the list of projects might change. And on the left-hand side here, it's a little bit small, but 3 projects are listed for potential removal of the list for 2026, the pre-zoning project for updated OCP, optimization of development processes, or planning to support pre-zoning for City Hall Corners. On the right-hand side, we're listing the 6 projects that I referenced earlier for possible advancement. To complete my introduction on the report, there's also a list of council resolutions, 2 lists actually. The first list in the report lists the ones that are planned to be actioned sometime this year, in the order shown here and also listed in the report would be the order that staff would action those, and it would be time permitting. It depends on how much work is going on in a given moment in the council priority projects. A second list, if I included it, I did. There's also a number of council resolutions that are closely related or are specifically related to other projects. And those ones are parked, if you will, for that project to come along, and then these directions will be included in there. And we're also identifying some work plan items. Those are items that are either recurring, ongoing initiatives that staff will be working on, but substantial to note here, or projects that staff have in mind for actioning in the future that either replace aging bylaws or programs, or facilitate more efficient service provision by the department. And then finally, there's a long list at the end with a long list of projects and with tentative dates, very tentative dates I should note, because it brings us all the way to 2030 with multiple projects a year potentially. But that's something that is a list of bit of a resource list, if you will, or an options list for later that would work towards the implementation of the official community plan. However, that list could only be advanced if down the road we would consider really increasing capacity for projects, so we could increase the number per year. That could be done, but it's provided there for your information. So depending on the direction today, we will follow up with scope confirmation of select council priority projects as the ones that are selected by council, and we would follow up on the council resolution and the work plan items as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much for the overview and the presentation. Sure, there's some questions from members of staff, and we'll get to those. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowl, for both the presentation and all of the options. And there are many that jump off the page for me. One is tenant protection bylaw. I think that might be very important as we go forward with densification, particularly for older properties and older rental properties that may be replaced. Are we, in your opinion, so each option, do we have any flexibility within each of the options? In other words, if I wanted to take the tenant protection policy and move it to another option, is that possible? Or, not that I want to do that tonight, but is that possible to sort of mix and match, or would you prefer we stay with the way the format is in terms of the elements of each format? Thank you, or each option.
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So there's the question of if it's advanced, then what is changing in the other scope. And then in addition, I didn't mention that in my presentation, but we did attach project options analysis. And you can see that for those projects, we still brought back the options that, in this case, were already provided to you, but also some new ones for infill housing and village area planning and the housing strategy. It's really up to council if council would like to discuss certain projects in detail first or at a later date. That's staff is open to either approach. Thank you.
Sure. Chair, so I might suggest as a process, because I think some of the things that we're going to struggle with is, okay, like if we do this, then what is the impact on that? And so I think if there's clarification on some of those type of questions, that might be helpful. It might help frame some of your thoughts in terms of what you'd prefer. But so please continue, Councillor Green. You can ask whatever questions you want. That was just oh, sorry, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. If I may, just to help with the conversation, I think what Mr. Bowl has outlined is really for Council to advance any one of those projects that are not currently on the list. You either need to reduce the scope of the existing ones, all of them, or swap one out for another one. So those are really the sort of the two options. It's either to reduce the scope of the existing project so that you can add one new one, or swap one for one.
Please go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, through you, thank you. And I don't want to complicate the process at all, but this honestly is a workshop waiting to happen for us as a council with planning staff. I know that may sound, but I don't know how, without a fulsome discussion together, I'm not I don't feel qualified at this point in time or informed well enough to start picking and choosing. So I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity for us to sit down together in a special setting with planning staff to go through these in the proper way? I don't think we're going to do them justice if we do it on the fly, so to speak, or without a chance to really sit with each other and go through these. They're all important. I'm looking at option 2. Again, that will become extremely important as densification rolls out. So, I mean, there are many important ones, and I just don't feel I can make decisions tonight. Thank you.
Sure, and I appreciate that comment. I do have allocated for up to an hour tonight for discussion. So, and I'm happy to be, I'll just, as the chair, I'm happy to take this a little bit more informally so we can have a bit of a conversation around the table. And let's see how far we get tonight, and if we can get to some decision. This is hard, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we have essentially a very limited number of things that we can do and a long list of things that we absolutely should or have to do. And so, you know, this is just a reality of constraints that we have within the current staffing and time available. So, yeah, let's do our best to kind of work through this and understand what those constraints are, and if we want to do it, and if we can't get to an answer tonight, we can consider other things, but I'm going to do my best to get us through it today. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I don't want to just do my best sort of to get through it. I really want to give this some careful consideration because these are important issues and they have meaning both for our planning department, but they also have meaning for us and our community. So I guess that's where I'm at. I don't mean to be difficult, but I think this really requires maybe a different process than sitting at this table tonight in this format. That's my point, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I keep pushing it the wrong way. My apologies, the microphone was off. A couple of things just to kind of, might help kind of frame our debate here. One, I think there is there's a cleave between the community action pieces, which has a sort of own staff pieces and others. So I think we're considerations within that sort of climate action piece. And then there's also, I think, a little bit of a divide between things that are sort of more direct impact pieces in the community, things like bylaw changes and those sorts of things. And then there's more sort of the longer term planning and those pieces. And I think I think that's probably philosophically maybe a bit of a way to look at it as well as do we want to, you know, how we want to split up time available for those. But I'll go to Councillor Patterson next.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some questions that will then help me mull it over while others ask their questions. And thank you for this report, Mr. Bowker. It's helpful, although it would be even more helpful if we had more time available and money available to accomplish these things. On attachment 1, item 36, that developed the corporate climate action plan, and I know that you know, that can be fairly robust, but I am also just wondering about our procurement policy, because we were adapting, I thought, some of our procurement policy to include a lens as on climate affected issues that would be related to it, or energy management or whatnot. So I'm just wondering if some of this may be covered off as part of our procurement process.
I want to make sure, you said community action, climate action plan, but I think you're referring to the corporate climate action plan? Okay. Okay. So Mr. Bolt wanted to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, we do have an element there noted, corporate policies, and kind of a very general indication, but that would extend to procurement policies as well. So I think that is something that will be considered as part of that project. Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you. I do have more here. The number 93, that's advanced planning to support the pre-zoning for Cedar Hill Corner. If we do not decide on moving this forward, will that in fact then preclude us doing future planning for some of the costs of district services that would be required to facilitate the development.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. It depends. In the revised scope listed in attachment 2, we would still do the infrastructure and facilities assessment. If the project were taken out of the list and parked for the future, in that case, that all of the work would wait for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and if I may just go on, let me see, it's number 82, that's on attachment 3, and there was create a standards of maintenance bylaw for heritage designated properties, and while I understand, I mean, I haven't listened to the Heritage Commission on this, but I understand some of the intent of it, but creating the standard without enforcement, without having a methodology for enforcement could be problematic and may not gain us any benefit of actually developing the standard. So I'm wondering if there has been any discussion about actually developing and enforcing the bylaw at the Heritage Commission.
I'm not sure to give that to staff or to the, this hasn't been, I think, agreed. Go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. For you, I believe the intent of a standards of maintenance bylaw is to have an enforcement mechanism, because it would set standards and it would allow an avenue to be able to follow up with owners of heritage designated buildings to ask or require them to do better maintenance on their buildings. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that information, Director Bull. But on that, I mean, yeah, there would be an enforcement piece, but so often on these properties, either there's difficulty getting contractors, or it's that the applicant, the owner of the property is not financially able to carry this cost, and so I wouldn't want to move anything forward if it wasn't actually going to really serve a meaningful purpose to the district. And so in the case of hardship, we have no remedy, financial hardship. There is no remedy available through other than the foundation, I guess. Is that correct?
Mr. Bull, I think the only grants we have available, we have grants available through the Heritage Foundation. We don't have any other funding models.
Thank you. And number 91, the tenant protection bylaw, that would be specifically for purpose-built rental properties, and will not then include secondary suites or homes. They're excluded from any opportunity on that. Is that correct?
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, yes, that's correct. This applies to rental development, purpose-built, and only to redevelopment, not to renovations either. Thank you.
That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have anybody else on the speaking list, so I'll go ahead to Councillor Braithwaite and then Smart.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, when I'm looking at option number 1, that says advance as previously planned, and I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously those are that's a realistic list that we wouldn't require any additional staff for. Is that correct?
Sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, that's a package of projects that are already directed. They can all be started in 2026. It would be hard to finish all of them in 2026, so it's clearly a full plate, but we believe that we can advance all of them in some shape or form this year. Thanks.
And if I may, Mayor, through you, so then if a new staff person came on board, then there will be changes to that list, or could there be changes to that list that some things may be able to be added in?
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yes, maybe. Depends a bit what kind of staff and what the timing is of arrival. Even if a decision were made in the budget this spring to add people, that would still need to be actioned. So we wouldn't realistically have additional staff until later this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think, I think our first priority should be those that are, to look at these that are legally required or that unlock other work. So particularly to me, like it would be the OCP, implementation housing policies, and development process improvements. And I think once those are in place, then we can layer in the climate and other strategic initiatives. Otherwise, I think we risk doing a lot of good work very slowly. And I think the mistake that councils make is prioritizing what really feels most important rather than what makes everything else possible. And we need to really focus on what makes everything else possible. So that would be, to me, like we have to think about things like, does this reduce risk? Does it enable other work, or is it mainly just a value-added thing? So I think for me, that's how I'm going to try and prioritize. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I have Councillor Smart and Appleton. Councillor Watson, do you
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Bull, I guess my one question is really just around whatever decisions we make today at this table, we're not taking anything off this list in making decisions today unless we direct. So just as far as if we decide, for instance, to go ahead with option one, that doesn't mean that we are not going to still be looking at a lot of the other projects that we might have hoped to add in today. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor. I should probably clarify then that no, if option one were council's direction, then you can discuss other projects, but it would be for 2027. So yeah, if council still wanted to explore others, then either option two would be a good starting point, or option four. Option two, you would reduce scope and create space for one more project, and in option four, you would basically start swapping projects for projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Bull. Then just to clarify again, so if, for instance, we went ahead with option one today, what would be the status of the new projects such as the affordable housing strategy, the tenant protection policy, and the other sort of new things that we might hope to add in today? I just wondered, timeline-wise, are those, can you just remind me? I guess that's part of these lists as far as, I'm just trying to remember how long listed they will be if we don't advance them today.
Mr. Bull, how long is long?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think the first opportunity where Council will talk about Council priority projects again is in June. So I still would be pessimistic about, if we proceed with option one, about any opportunities to start anything later this year. However, by that time we would know a bit more about which projects have been advanced or hopefully completed, and that would start to give clarity on timeline. So that's in June, the next available opportunity, and another option is the next available option after that is in November or December, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Through Mr. Bull. So just one other question, and then I have a couple of comments. With regards to option two, would it be comparable if with the deferring of the community climate action plan, could we, instead of the building construction and relocation bylaw prioritize the tenant protection bylaw instead? Are those equivalent sizes?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. That's a little bit complicated because we are talking about different staff assigned to different areas. So yeah, I was referencing option two moments ago. I should have said option two and three, because in three is where we changed the scope of some projects. In two, we changed the timing within the climate action plan. So two is an option on its own, where basically we pause or delay one project, and in option three, there's 3 projects that get reduced scope, and that opens up an opportunity for one. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just some general comments, because I gather that's appropriate at this time. I went into reviewing this report very much hoping to add in the affordable housing strategy and the tenant protection bylaws, things that concern me if we put off too long. However, in reading the report, and I really appreciated the depth that it went into to have us really be able to empathize a little bit what it must be like to juggle all these projects. I guess I surprised myself in the end of coming to the conclusion for myself that I was really very much in favor of option one in advancing what we have previously planned. While I am open to option two, I'm slightly in favor of not going ahead with that from the efficiency of proceeding with work underway. With regards to option three, I'm strongly against reducing the scope for the three projects listed, particularly in light of actually bringing forward the plans in our official community plan to actually have further depth. So it concerns me greatly that having just approved our official community plan, that we would sort of lose traction and momentum on completing our pre-zoning. And with regards to the idea of reducing the scope for optimizing development processes, I almost saw that as counter to, like, if we can't do our affordable housing projects, there's so many things in that optimizing of development processes that are going to help us in the long run. And again, our OCP was so strongly based on advancing the planning for Cedar Hill Corner, so I just can't imagine reducing the scope of that at this time. And similarly, I'm not currently in favor of option four for many of the same reasons that I really feel like we need to continue the momentum of the work underway to really complete the work that we've been working at with our official community plan. So I'll remain open to hearing what everybody has to say, but my conclusion in reading this report and reflecting on it was that I'm very much in favor of option one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Can I have Councillor Appleton and Watson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think this question is kind of sort of already asked, but I guess I'll put it to Mr. Bull. Just essentially, we don't have sort of universal intercompatibility with the individual component parts because we're talking about different staff. So I understand that, Community Climate Action Plan, Corporate Climate Action Plan, clearly going to fall within the purview of the Senior Planner for Climate. So swapping one of those up doesn't necessarily give you the capacity back. Not that I don't think that person can't work on other things, but it doesn't necessarily give you the capacity. But then when I review option two, there is an idea to defer the Community Climate Action Plan and adding in this case, the deconstruction bylaw. So I was wondering whether staff could comment on kind of how that happens. I assume it's not this sort of like substitute. The climate planner is not going to work on a deconstruction bylaw, but there's obviously something else at play there. So just ask that question.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, through the mayor. Well, the deconstruction bylaw is something that has a climate impact, and so therefore we felt does fit well in the scope of work for that staffing resource. It's also something that has been worked on at the CRD, and in this case, this happens to be the planner that also has been involved in that. So, but that said, for the other topics, there is not quite that affinity, or that's clearly more housing related. That's kind of the background to that particular option. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Your Worship. And so through you, just follow-up question, which I already know the answer to, given what Mr. Bull has said, but just to confirm, then, in my particular case, one of the things that I would really like to see us advancing, because it's been sitting there for so long, is the village area planning process and the initial steps. I was pleased to see kind of some of the proposals in the report for initial steps that can be taken around the village area plan. But what I'm hearing Mr. Bull say is that isn't the swap out for the Community Climate Action Plan is not a suitable equivalent.
Thank you, and through the mayor, indeed, but option 3 does offer an option for that as well as option 4. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I'll just take the opportunity, just because option 3 got, as Mr. Bull referenced option 3, for general comment, I would just say that for me as well, option 3 is definitely not a preferred option for me. I would hesitate to water down any of that work. I too am kind of coming around with the understanding that the pieces don't necessarily swap out one for one. I too am coming back around to the idea of option one being the preferred option for me, primarily because the last four components on option one, which are not climate related, I believe are essential in the near term for me personally. We have put a lot of stock in the zoning for the Cedar Hill corner and working with UVic as part of the new OCP to create some of the housing that we need. So I would like to see us be on that in as directed a way as possible, as early as possible. We're already seeing successes with the optimizing development processes, and I know that there's much more to be done on that side of things. And then, yeah, the OCP follow-up and pre-zoning to actually actualize some of the housing that's contemplated in the OCP, I think for me is super critical. So ultimately, and I want to take the opportunity just to say thanks again to the Community Building and Planning Department for providing the analysis. Ultimately, if the decision of council is to come around and basically say stay the course and go with option one, that isn't reflective of the fact that there is comprehensive information included in the report that I know the council has reviewed to assess, make their decision making. So I don't want to have that reflect on to say that there isn't really important information to kind of gauge where the workload at Community Building and Planning. So I know how much work went into this report, so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Watson.
Thank you very much. I have to say that I was sharing many of Councillor Green's concerns about what was in front of us and how we would move forward, but because I think it is, we've been presented with many, many permutations and combinations, and it was a bit overwhelming, so I feel the overwhelm of the staff when I read it, which is actually good to feel, because it gives us a sense of how ambitious we are, but that we have to cut our coat to fit our cloth, or cut the whatever the expression is. I just messed that one up. Cut the cloth to fit the coat, right? So, gosh, yeah, I'm having difficulties later, and I can't get names right. The other thing is that in this package, amongst ourselves, we haven't established any. If I were doing decision makers matrix on this, I'd want some established criteria by which we do the trade-offs, and we haven't really figured that out amongst ourselves. So for that reason, I think that the simplest approach is actually to stay the course and stick with the advance the projects as previously planned, because otherwise we're getting into a very complicated exercise, and I'm not sure that we've got the time to do that. Staff need direction and they need to move forward. So I think it is stay the course. The other thing I like about stay the course, option one, is that of those 6 projects, I think there's only one that has extensive community consultation, and that'll be on the Community Climate Action Plan. And that's another consideration, because there is a sense in the community. We've had a lot of big projects. We're going out a lot to ask for things district-wide. And if we start adding and subtracting other projects that have community consultation chunks, I think that can be counterproductive, or we're going to get a little bit of pushback from the community about being overstretched. I do have one question, though, however, about option one, if I may, to staff, and that's the number 93, planning to support pre-zoning for Cedar Hill Corner. As I understand it, that pre-zoning is a kind of a difficult concept to consider for this project, because really it's going to be some kind of community master plan community, probably done with a comprehensive development permit. So there's no really pre-zoning there until we actually have a proposal to look at and respond to and fit in the boxes. So if you could just talk me through that. I understand there's some viability around infrastructure, but what's the pre-zoning bit in that? Because I don't see pre-zoning given what the university wants to achieve and what we'd like them to achieve.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Watson. It's a good question. Perhaps you could also just touch on what is the impact if we are doing our engineering work, but we can't spend time on the zoning work until UVic meets a certain milestone. Does that shift the options that we have in front of us today as well, Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. When that particular project was initiated or thought about in November, it was still at the time of the official community plan and the discussion about pre-zoning and a lot of interest in the site. But before the site can be fully pre-zoned, there's a lot more detail that we would need on our proposal. We recognize that might not be readily available, but we were still interested to do something this year, and that's where the term interim zoning comes into play there. And yeah, the starting point really is that a study about what are the infrastructure and facilities needs related to a big new neighborhood like that. I think very important information both for us as well as for UVic to be able to do that more detailed planning. And then after that, or based on that, we still need to discuss that further with the university, but what kind of information could be available this year, and subsequently what kind of zoning options would there be available to the district this year. That is not quite clear just yet, so that would require that further discussion through collaboration with the university, and that's something that needs to continue to be discussed. Thank you.
Yeah, just kind of to recap. So it's not truly, pre-zoning is maybe not quite the right term here. It's like early planning, pre-planning feasibility and feasibility assessment in interaction with UVic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I look at that one as essentially flagging that we are very interested in their progressing it, but ultimately it will be up to them to do it. Before I go to you for a second time, Councillor Green, I'm just going to, a couple of things. One is just on option 3 in terms of reducing scope. I was struggling a little bit with the proportionality because the way I read it was we had to reduce 3 things pretty dramatically to be able to add one thing out of the other list. So it was 5 projects in the OCP work plus 5 projects in optimization plus interim zoning at UVic, all taken away essentially to add something like infill housing changes or maintenance bylaw or something. So it didn't quite seem like that was the proportionality. So can you just maybe, was I reading that wrong, or is that just because it's coming out of so many different pockets that we keep being careful there in terms of what that would add?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I think frankly, we have identified an option to make space for one of the larger candidates, so to say. So that's why it's substantial, because it would allow for a larger project to start this year. And that said, with the smaller ones, they are more easily. That's a different approach. That probably it could fit better maybe with option 4, or with other options are to pause or defer other projects temporarily and create space for one of the smaller ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I just had was actually it's not really any other question. I think everything else I have on my list has been largely answered, so I'm just going to speak to a couple of points. One, I think I hear what everybody's saying around the table, and I'm kind of tending to kind of think, like a lot of people, I had ideas of what to change, and I'm probably coming back to mostly keeping things intact. I do think the climate piece, I kind of feel like we should be advancing a corporate climate action plan, because that actually impacts our operational impact on climate directly. But I'd be in some ways supportive of switching, because I think there is quite a bit of stuff still happening with the community, with pre-zoning and other things going on that, refocusing that on the deconstruction piece of it makes sense to me, but that's kind of where I'm sitting on that one option too. And the other one I would just, I guess, actually one question I do have is that I think the intention of the option 1 or slight changes is that the big planning pieces that are marching us forward, that kind of create the structure for the change, are advancing, and I think that's what I heard from a number of people, that's important to not lose the optimization, these other pieces. Is there, can I just get a sense of, because there's a number of what I would consider to be smaller projects, like some of the bylaws referenced here, the heritage maintenance, these other things that are the sort of more standalone one-off type pieces. Or is there sort of within the work plan, if things are slow or not advancing on something else at a time, that some of those other ones can be picked up as possible, or is it essentially those just get set aside in this model under what's being proposed? Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, that definitely crossed our mind as well. That said, back to particularly the current projects, right, listed in attachment 1, because that's a very substantial list. there's no downtime anticipated in 2026, unfortunately. If the list were a bit shorter, perhaps there would be these kind of openings. But with the current list, it's hard to realistically see an opening for the smaller projects. Doesn't mean they couldn't happen, but that's where the recommendation comes into play. Well, if one of the smaller ones is a higher priority because of, could be for a number of reasons, then it would be best to take one of the existing planned projects and say, well, then we'll take that one out to make sure that we can still do justice to the other bigger projects, plus take good care of this smaller project. Thank you.
For that. So just for my clarification, because in like item 76, the completed mandated pre-zoning to implement updated OCB, in the option under sort of the downsizing, it strikes out, 5 of the 6 and just leaves a servicing study. So is that, but there's things in there like the home-based business, UVic campus zoning. So is there options for us to maybe look at maybe prioritizing some different things in some of those time slots than all those pieces in there? I'm just trying to get my head around how granular we can be on this conversation.
Maybe I can answer that, and I think, I agree with you, it's an overwhelming list, and I think part of bringing this all together was to provide council with, the scope and scale of what is facing a very small department. Staff did go through this quite comprehensively and try and figure out what are the pieces could we tease out. So I would say that, I don't think there is an option that would allow staff to be able to advance smaller things by picking and choosing the scope elements that,
Okay.
like, we've kind of done that work as best we can. What I will commit to council, and I think Andre mentioned this, is, when we come back at the touch base in June, that will be a really good point to be able to say, we've got a little bit more capacity. We can start another project, one of the smaller ones, and really, we will, obviously, they want to get through this just as much as council does. So I think, it's maintaining a level of expectations in terms of what can be accomplished. The other thing I wanted to note that is in the report, but Andre didn't really touch on it, is a number of the council resolutions that, council makes resolutions and asks staff to do something. Some of those have turned into much larger projects. The blasting regulation, the short-term rentals, like those have taken a significant amount of work. So I just want to caution council as well that there's a number of those council resolutions that come up, reporting back, that all takes time on this very small team. So I understand where you're going, Mayor, and I don't like to say no, but at this point, I think trying to tinker with the elements of each project and whether or not that would free up additional capacity, I think the answer is no.
No, please don't feel bad about saying no. That's part. I asked the question because I was curious about the possibility of it. I do understand the interactions and on those pieces. So I get it. The only other one that I wanted to just flag was is in terms of other things, was just really based on the conversation we had today with in the Uplands, and I do think that there's an enormous amount of public interest in us having clarity about what is and isn't allowed under a small-scale multi-unit housing. I do think that work really should be looked at. I think the report we got back last week was phenomenal. I think it gave us a lot of positives, that a lot of it is working well, but there's still a few things there that don't seem to be working that well. And I do think that I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's any mechanism by which to do that, but I do think that is one area that I think there's going to be a lot of public request for us to be looking at that either now or in the reasonably near future. So that's my only sort of flag of even though I actually have personal ones that are higher in my wish list, but I do think that's one that we may be pushed into considering just by public interest at some point. I'm going to go to Councillor Green for a second time and then Patterson.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I think I'm going to agree with my three colleagues, Councillor Smart, Appleton, and Watson, that option one is the most pragmatic approach. I think it's the one that makes sense, given where we are with time. This is a council that is on a downward time slot. Our meaningful work really ends in the summertime, and then we're into campaigns, and then we're into an election. So it's very likely that this will not be the same council in the fall. So therefore, I think option one is important because these will be achievable. and recognized that way. I was thinking of the metaphor, not the coat and cloth, but I was thinking of the Instapot, that is what your work has probably been like. They put you in an Instapot, you do it, every so often you release the steam because you've had community, political, and council pressure to get all of this work done, and it's been a tough slog, I'm sure. So while I feel that there is a better process ahead, and it may be, I would recommend for a new council, this would be an important thing to do together. I agree that option one is the best path forward between now and the fall, and I really appreciate the work that you've done to get this to us. And I'm like the mayor, I have many other ones that I feel strongly about, but I just don't think it's realistic. So thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I'd be pragmatic about this. No, actually, and I, like my colleagues around the table, I really do appreciate the work and effort and just all of the discussions you have to have about how to manage council's wish list, the priorities. But and attachment one, I think is good. I'm leaning though towards option two, and I would in fact prefer to defer developing the community climate action plan in order, because it did say an option two, that then we could advance the deconstruction building bylaw and the tenant protections, and those are both, and well, at least that's how I was reading it. No.
Just for clarification, if I may.
Just a deconstruction bylaw? Okay.
Yes.
So I think considering the number of demolitions that are prevalent in the district and the desire by the community to see this, because they do see it as strongly as a link to environmental issues, and because it is something that we could in fact exert, I think, a little more control over than the community climate action plan, which is we can encourage, but we don't have as much control over that as we would on the deconstruction bylaws. So, and the CRD does already have some information on the deconstruction bylaw. So that's the one change that I would make. The tenant protections, though, I think are important because, too, they are already affecting people's lives in the community, because we've had multi-residential buildings that have gone through renovictions, and the tenants have not had some of the same benefits that they would have in Saniture or the City of Victoria. So, however, I understand we can't do everything, so that would be mine, would go to option two and do the deconstruction bylaw.
Just for my clarification on the motion, if option two is moved, it would basically move everything in option one, with the one change of the climate planning department would shift from the community plan to primarily focusing on the deconstruction as a priority. Is that correct? So option two does include everything else in option one, with just that one change. Is that just, I think, I want to make sure we're all understanding that.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? I'm hearing some getting around the table of this that do this. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
I would just put a motion on the floor for debate, Your Worship. So I would move option one, council confirming timing and scope for those projects already selected for advancement on November 27th, 2025. So as per attachment one of the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? I should let you go first, Councillor Appleton, if you wish. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit here, and just wanted to reiterate the value of the report and being able to make this analysis for sure. I think that there are, again, it's a somewhat intractable list. I think everybody understands that all the things on the quote-unquote long list are things that have value and things that will be impactful to the community. So I could go back and forth between option one and somewhat to option two as well, because option two presents a little bit more of a tactile item. But in this particular case, my decision making comes down to, as far as keeping the community climate action pieces, as the staff have laid out in the report, it's a long-term initiative. It is going to take quite a bit of time to get up, running, and to do the work around it. So I think we should try to make a concerted start on it, or at least initiate that project in advance of the next council term, just so that the community can see that that's that is a strategic priority for this council as a part of our current strategic goals. So as on the sustainability side of things, but that's my rationale for option 1 rather than option 2, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Speaking in favor of option 1, I just wanted to speak about that this is a very hard decision for me because I really want to see that deconstruction bylaw. And so I just wanted to share the reasoning for me with this slight preference for option 1 is that I see our climate action plan as actually one plan in the end. And I really appreciate that staff have operationalized it into 2 components so they could move forward with the corporate aspects first. But in the end, I think there's potentially going to be a lot of synergies between the 2, maybe even a public engagement opportunity between the 2, and in the end, hopefully bringing it together into one plan and how they interact. And so because of that, I'm worried about bringing them too far apart. And having them be 2 separate. So that's why I'm in favor of option 1.
Thank you. As a discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same about the building deconstruction and relocation bylaw. I would really have liked to have seen that in there. However, I'm hoping that if we do go, if option 1 is approved, then perhaps in June, when staff come back and say, wow, look at all this time we have, then perhaps we can go a lot down the road of the building deconstruction and relocation bylaw. That's my Pollyanna view. Or if we hire somebody new that can actually take something like this on. So I will support option 1, but I would really like to see that building deconstruction and relocation bylaw be in there sometime.
Thank you. Councillor Watson?
Yeah, I've kind of already spoken to this, but I would say that I think that I find some parallels here to the discussions we often come back to when we're looking at our infrastructure planning and funding, and how much money we put towards it. That we made a commitment, and it is important when we make decisions sometimes to stick with them for a while. I think there's merits in lots of the other things that are further down the list in the options, but they weren't the ones that we decided on in November, and there hasn't been any ground shift or world calamity or anything that would make me think that it's an appropriate time to change our priorities. So I think that sometimes staying the course really is important. It's a valuable discipline and as a governance body, and so I think that's also partly why I will be voting for option 1.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody's comments around the table, and however, I won't support attachment 1. When I look at the Develop the Community Climate Action Plan, the level of effort is high, and I think there's community fatigue in engagement. You know, I'm hearing that more and more from people. My God, you're always asking us to come forward with things, and there has been there's been so many comments about that, the deconstruction, and people are seeing the homes come down on a regular basis, and there's very few that are being done in a controlled manner. I mean, they're just bulldozing them, and it is painful to watch. So while I certainly respect the opinion of my colleagues around the table, I won't support option 1.
Yeah, thank you all. To speak briefly, and I'm going to speak against the motion because I do support option 2, and I do that because I think there's a couple of things here that weigh on me. One is we have a lot of work going on that is on the building and planning side of things, really that still need a lot of high touch with the community, with a lot of changes and things going on, and I think that we have an opportunity in the climate piece with the corporate climate action plan and the deconstruction piece to really tactilely affect both our operational costs, our direct climate impact, and frankly the waste going into the landfill at this time from the deconstruction is a major problem. They've implemented all kinds of rules of separating and doing things, but those only really work if we have source-based separation and management. So I see it as a top priority and one that really directly relates to our core responsibility of waste management. So I'd rather see us focus on that and get it done. So I'm not going to support this motion. I would support option 2. It's kind of funny that these are like splitting hairs almost, the difference between the two, but that's my rationale for preferring option 2 over option 1. So I'm prepared to call the question. So the motion on the floor is in support of option 1. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Patterson and myself opposed, so that does carry. And I thank you very much to everybody for the debate, and I really appreciate, it's been said, a very complicated piece of moving pieces, and an important conversation to have as a council to give some direction and some support for the work that you guys are going to be doing. So good luck with all of that. Moving now to reports. Oh, you're going to step out. So Councillor Appleton does have to leave. Thank you very much, Councillor Appleton. I'm going to continue the meeting while you pack up. We have this item is available for public input if anybody does wish to speak to it online or in person. Moving to item 9.1, the Sustainable Procurement Policy Amendment. We have Ms. Lachance here to speak to us. She is our Director of Finance and Asset Management.
Sorry, just one moment. I'll be right with. My apologies. We're squishing in. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
I'll do a brief introduction on the report and then, of course, be available for questions after. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Leah Hamilton, the district's Manager of Procurement. She joined us recently this fall and hit the ground running. Has an extensive background in local government as well as provincial government procurement, and we look forward to future reports with benefits back to the district from the work that we're currently underway with. She co-authored the report with me, so as I mentioned, we'll be comfortable to answer any questions that you have. The report before you, Council, presents staff recommendations to amend the district's sustainable procurement policy. In your package, you'll find the track changes version of the policy to assist you in navigating the changes. The policy before you was first approved in 2019 and was last updated in March of 2025 for local supplier preferences. The policy is subject to cyclical reviews to ensure it remains current and operationally efficient. The recommended amendments arose from a recent review and are for the most part housekeeping in nature, such as updating positions, save for one more substantial change with respect to change orders. Staff recommend aligning contract change approvals to the schedule of purchasing authorities attached to the policy, consistent with the treatment of the contract awards. Currently, a different process is required for change orders above $50,000, requiring council reporting and approvals on all change orders above this value. If amended, the change will result in all change orders over $250,000 requiring council's approval, between $100,000 and $250,000 CAO approval, and below $100,000 and just above $25,000 director approval, as mentioned in alignment with the schedule of purchasing authorities attached to the policy. Of note for council is that by way of policy, the Director of Finance still approves all contract awards and changes greater than $25,000 when reviewing and approving for compliance against policy as well as budget approval. Also, to ensure transparency, all contract changes will be added to the over $25,000 purchases reported quarterly to council within the financial results report. Previously, it would have been only purchases being reported, and in recent quarterlies was not included, but will be going forward. Now it will include both change orders as well as contract awards. These changes improve capital project delivery while still retaining risk mitigation through contract approval limits with the Director of Finance oversight. If approved, the updated policy will take effect immediately, and staff will implement supporting operational procedures. With that, that ends my introduction or overview of the report. We're both happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance, and welcome, Ms. Hamilton. Nice to have you here. Are there questions for staff on this policy? Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, and thank you for the report through you, Chair. I think that there's some benefits for this, and so thank you for bringing it forward. I'm wondering if sometimes what this might mean is that we might select higher upfront cost options sometimes with this procurement policy, or is it always that it's based on pricing?
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. The procurement policy goes through a number of evaluation criteria that will be required. Depends on the type of procurement process that we're undertaking. So it's not just based on price, but of course will be a significant consideration.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, and through you. So is it a more complex process for the people that we're procuring to?
Go ahead, Ms. LaChance.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, thank you for the question. The changes that are being proposed are actually only to change orders on the contract subsequent to contract award. Council's experience on the original contract award will remain unchanged. The only thing that would be changing is the receiving of change orders. I should mention, as in answering this question, that in recent years the practice has been just that. Council has been receiving change orders over 250,000.
Thank you. I just have one question through myself to you, Ms. LaChance. This reporting and the delegated authority, what are the precautions put in place to prevent sort of serial change orders, so that each change order may only be $20,000, but cumulatively they add up to $250,000? So just curious what the tools are in place to ensure that those triggers are met, or that the oversight. I appreciate that they all have to be signed off on by higher levels, but is there maybe just talk to that, just as how those are managed?
Yes, thank you. In response to your question, Your Worship, the district has an internal process where, by way of the review by the Director of Finance, as well as in the case, for example, with the CAO signing off on either contract award or change order, understanding that total budget approval with the contingency, and then understanding those change orders in relationship to the overall value and the allotted contingency set up at the beginning of a project.
Okay. And is that reporting included to council, or is that just an internal report?
In earlier referenced, to you, Your Worship, my apologies. So as referenced, the council will receive quarterly reports on any of those awards and change orders over 25,000, so you will see them.
Sorry, and the report would also include the total budget amount, so like where it fits within the change order, like within the total budget allocation, is that correct? Or is
Yes.
it just the amounts?
Yes, so there will be, included in the quarterly variance report, you will see the capital budget as well as actuals there for the connection. Yes.
All right, I don't see other questions. Is there any members of the public? Please raise your hand at this time if you wish to speak to council on this matter before we get to direction from council. I'm not seeing any hands either here or online, so I'm ready to take the motion.
Move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. So there's two-part recommendation there, so we're both aware of the two pieces. They're obviously aligned. Any discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance, Ms. Hamilton, and thank you for the sort of continuous improvement approach to these things, so much appreciated. We move then to item 10.1, which is the official community plan bylaw amendment bylaws brought to us based on feedback from a previous meeting. We have Mr. Brown here to introduce it. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. So for you this evening, we have OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4949, 2026, for consideration of first and second reading. So this amendment bylaw covers the material that was presented in the staff report from January 12th. And most of the amendments are housekeeping in nature, cleaning up the document and adding more clarification where needed throughout. Also included are correcting some mapping errors that were discovered after the last public hearing. 3 abutting properties along Cadborough Bay Road and at the corner of Bowker, and then 1 other property that was discovered on Henderson Road at 3443. It's the first property just south of the school site. That's in the last iteration of the map had no data in there, so it didn't have our colors. It should be yellow with the rest of the block, so that's been updated as well.
Thank you for catching that.
As well, we've added in, as council directed in the last meeting, adding dark sky principles to various development permit area guidelines. Incorporating input from the letter received from the Uplands Neighborhood Association, and then adding in provisions for at the neighborhood village at Cedar Hill Crossroad and Henderson Road, provisions to consider up to 6 stories when affordable housing and amenities are put forward. And then lastly, we've added the notwithstanding clause to allow for taller buildings that are currently existing that exceed the new height limits in the OCP. And so with that, staff recommend consideration of first and second reading, consideration of the bylaw against the waste management plan and the 5-year financial plan, and then direct scheduling a public hearing for early March.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Questions for staff? Thank you for incorporating all of the directions. So I need these to be read, to be dealt with separately.
I'll move that the official community plan bylaw number 4942-2025 amendment bylaw number 4949-2026 be read a first time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Don't usually debate on first reading, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move that council considers the proposed official community plan update in conjunction with the district's financial plan and the Capital Regional District Core Area Waste Management Plans.
Moved, seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move that the official community plan bylaw number 4942-2025, amendment bylaw 4949-2026 be read a second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. We can discuss at this point. Is there any debate? Come on. Okay. Call the question then. All those in favor? And any opposed? Unopposed. Thank you.
I'll move that council direct staff to schedule a public hearing for official community plan bylaw number 4942-2025, amendment bylaw number 4949-2026.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed. Thank you very much. We look forward to the public hearing on those changes, and thank you for getting that work done again so quickly and catching the extra little glitch in the map. The weird things that happen. Moving then to new business, notice of motion. So I'm happy to move this as I brought it forward. Is there a seconder for discussion? Moved and seconded. I think it's pretty well laid out here. This is having a pretty substantial impact on cost, and it's really a very strange scenario in which the level of salt is impacting our need to store, test, and truck salt all over the place at great expense. So I think this is an appropriate thing for ABICC to consider. It may actually stay there. It may not go to UBCM because it's really coastal communities that are primarily affected, but it's up to them whether they move it forward. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Notice of motion. We have two. These are just coming into the. You don't need to read them in. They're in the agenda package. Those will be dealt with at the next council meeting. And then we have a notice from Bluebird Cabs. an expansion, and the recommendation here is that we receive their letter. Moved and seconded. Do we need to anybody wish to discuss it? All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Have a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Thank you.